So I'm going to put up a photo on the screen right now of what I think might be the image of the year. You know how they have like photos of the year and things like that, and people win prizes for taking certain photos. I'm not sure who took this. This just kind of surfaced online and has since become somewhat of a viral image. But here it is. Um, I think that photo pretty much sums up the state of the country right now.
That's like Tiananmen Square in front of the tank for our times.
Exactly. Well, yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I wrote a little article a while back. This was back when I think the April jobs report came out or the May jobs report. It was during the spring. It was a while back. Positing the question, you know, between labor shortages and a sort of whining, sort of petulant capitalist class, including like the small business tyrants who, nobody wants to work anymore. Oh, I can't find anybody to, make the sandwiches at my little restaurant. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
like, is this
I
what a
went I
general
went from
strike?
275 to 285 an hour. Nobody wants to work.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. What do they want? $3? If I get $3, then I'm gonna have to charge $4.85 for a bacon, egg, and cheese instead of
And
four
nobody's going to
thirty-five.
pay that.
No one's gonna pay that. No one's gonna pay that. They're gonna go to McDonald's. They're gonna go to McDonald's. You're hurting the small businesses.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Robert Reich recently tweeted this out. He said it best. If you are not able to pay a living wage, you do not have a viable business model.
of course, of course. But you know what? Um, if you think that's true, as I do, excuse me, then there have been very few viable business models in this country for the last several decades, and that is being exposed right now. And that is what we're sort of living through. And so I posited the question: is this sort of what a general strike might look like in 2021? Is it not going to be, workers of the world unite? It's not going to be chance of solidarity forever. It's just going to be like, fuck
It's
you,
not
I'm
going
not
to be
going.
Woody Guthrie.
Right. It's just going to be like, whatever, fuck you, I'm not going. I'm staying home. I'm watching Netflix. You know what I mean? Like, because that's more emblematic of sort of where people are at right now.
Right.
And I think what the pandemic really did, I know what the pandemic did for me is it sort of really put into perspective the ultimate fragility of the whole system and how quickly all of your hustle and your effort and your drive can just be nullified by a tiny little bug. And so a lot of people think, well, if that's the case, then what am I going to bust my ass for $11 an hour for? What the hell's the point? Right. And what these small business tyrants don't understand is that very mentality because, their entire lives are about hustling and go getting and striving and succeeding. And so now that things are able to sort of kind of open back up again, they're like ready to go. They're like, okay, we're back. Come on, let's go. Let's hustle. Let's crush it. Let's kill it. All that sort of fucking nauseating lingo that they like to throw around.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm crushing it at work. I'm killing it at work. Fuck you. Go fucking drop dead. Killing it at work. Eat shit. Leave me alone. And that's what a lot of people are saying. And that's why there's a labor shortage. Now, the media calls it a labor shortage. What it really is a sort of de facto, uncoordinated general strike
Right.
of people who just decide, you know what? This last year has kind of showed me that, this is all pretty much meaningless anyway. And if I'm making $11 an hour, I may as well just stay home and make nothing and see if the government can give me a few $100s a week to, buy some ramen and keep my Netflix active. And then that's going to be my life. And you know what? I think that's where a lot of people have landed. And, it's up to capitalism. It's up to this great system, this unimpeachable system, the end of history system, right? It's up to capitalism to dig its way out of that. And it's not able to. It's not able to because it's not the flawless sort of divine system that it's been propped up to be, and that's being exposed right now. And it's being exposed not in the form of massive rallies and protests and direct actions. It's being exposed in the form of people just saying, you know what, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. And you have a guy like that out there in the rain holding that picket line. That's a guy with nothing to lose. That's a guy who says, you know what? Fuck this. And everything about it is emblematic of where the country is now, including the torrential rain, and the rising water levels. Yeah.
I think what we're seeing is 40 years of wage suppression blowing apart. That's essentially what it is. And I think part of this that's not being explored enough is if you keep people tired and scared, they get brainwashed. They're susceptible to brainwashing and they don't stand up for themselves, and you don't give them space to think, and you don't give them space to really get in touch with themselves and to cultivate self-awareness in a sense of their own identity and their own wants and their own needs.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so all of a sudden you shut down civilization essentially for a year, and now you've given people time to self-reflect. You've given people time to untangle some of that propaganda that they may have absorbed, that it's their lot in life to go bust their ass for crappy wages because American dream, right? Things are gonna break my way eventually, right? And they sat down and reflected on things like that. You gave them a lot of space to see, who am I? Who am I without, if I'm not exhausted and stressed all the time? And they don't want to go back to it. So all of a sudden, and look, the Republicans are not dumb in the end. They always argue against supporting workers because they know this is what's going to happen if you support them. If they're not stressed and tired all the time, they're going to start to feel empowered. They're going to start feeling their oats. They're going to start making demands. You got to keep them so scared and so, exhausted that they don't even have it in them to stand up for their own rights anymore.
Right. And so constantly occupied with the daily grind that they don't have time to take a step outside of themselves and realize, hey, is this my fate? Is this my destiny to just toil in this way forever? And it affects other things, not just your attitude, but like your health. Like I was in that pattern for a few years, hustling a million different jobs, sitting in an Uber 12 hours a day, shoving fast food down my throat whenever I had 5 minutes in between rides. And then once that shut down and I wasn't able to do that anymore, not only does it allow you to reflect, but it allows you to say, hey, wait a minute, my blood pressure is fucking through the roof. Like, I'm not healthy anymore. But you don't realize that in the middle of it. You gotta go. Right. And there's no time to do any of that. You don't have the mental bandwidth to do any of that. You don't even realize that you're neglecting it because you just have these blinders on that capitalism has basically put on you.
Right. Yep, you're being a hard worker and you're going to save a little money and you're going to get ahead and you're going to do that. And for the vast majority of people, that's not true. They're never, especially the way the economy is set up today, they're never going to get ahead. You're a cog in a machine, and they're going to chew you up and they're going to spit you out when you can't work anymore. And as far as Social Security goes, hey, we have a dwindling birth rate and an aging population. So good luck with that, folks. Getting your Social Security at the end of your pulling the plow for several decades. And you're not going to have a peaceful putting out to pasture kind of retirement. I don't, especially if you're in your 20s or 30s right now. So yeah, people woke up, and it's a combination of that. It's a combination of, this is another thing the Republicans are not wrong about. Yeah, if you weren't dumb, you didn't take this money the government gave you and go to the racetrack. You saved it. So people have savings that they did not have before. They can weather a strike. They can weather a career change. They didn't have that opportunity before. They just didn't have the savings in the bank. We have historically high savings rates right now in the United States. So, between that, hey, the workers can read a headline. They can see that everyone's desperate for workers. They can see that everyone's desperate for labor. Here's their chance. They've been used, abused, mistreated for 40 years. They had a little time to think about it, and they decided, hey, maybe it's time for the business to go in a different direction now. So you're having these mass strikes, and I don't. It's really, if you want to see what the corporate media's role in our society is, far from what the Fourth Estate's purpose was supposed to be, to keep government honest. Look how they're suppressing this. I mean, it should be one of the biggest stories in the country right now, that you're having these massive labor strikes all over the country. They're not even mentioning it. I would wager most people who get their news that way don't even know this is happening. They know there's a labor shortage that they talk about, because you can spin that in a capitalist direction. Oh, what are we going to do about these lazy workers? You can spin that way, but you can't spin strikes that way.
Well, let me play this, as long as you mentioned this. I wasn't going to play this clip because it's not the most interesting of clips, but this is an example of the Today Show actually covering what is going on.
This morning, American union workers helping keep your favorite foods in stock and TV shows on air, flexing new leverage. Picket lines popping up nationwide amid some industry labor shortages and severe supply chain issues.
The cheap labor bubble is finally busted.
More than 10,000 members of the United Auto Workers Union clocking out and speaking up. The group keeping 14 John Deere plants running across 5 states, demanding more.
If we have to set out for work a little while, we will.
The halt coming during a record-breaking year for the agricultural giant. $4.7 billion in profit so far. John Deere says they'll keep operations running while trying to resolve the rift. The UAW demands part of a resurgent fight for workers' rights, picking up steam from coast to coast.
We're fighting for everyone. If you clock in for a living, we're fighting for you.
Tavita Uhatafe is an airline union member who works for American Airlines. The native Tongan-turned-Texan is now visiting picket lines nationwide to show support for other unions, paying out of his own pocket to visit Nebraska for a Kellogg's labor fight and the Nabisco strike in Portland. What shifted to bring us here to this moment now?
A lot of upset workers. That's it. I mean, we're just tired of just being in the background and watching these CEOs make all this money.
Meanwhile, out in Hollywood, a potential strike by 60,000 film and TV workers is now just days away. In a series of tweets Thursday, their union writing, "If the studios want to fight, they poked the wrong bear." Their calls for higher pay, better benefits, and meal breaks growing louder ahead of the strike set for Monday, as more and more American workers look to the future.
I think they're not willing to take it anymore. And that's showing up in the strike activity. It's showing up in high quit rates. It's showing up in jobs being vacant for longer. And in fact, it's forcing employers to do better.
And we're also following another potential strike, this one on the West Coast. More than 20,000 workers of healthcare giant Kaiser Permanente have voted to authorize a strike, citing potential pay cuts and pandemic strain at the hospitals. The company saying that if the strike was to happen, it would have a crippling effect.
Good for them. Well, IATSE can go on strike because I'm pretty sure they finished filming The Witcher and they're done with post-production.
Right,
so
exactly.
at that
Yeah.
point, they can strike. So yeah, this is something that's been notoriously absent in the American labor scene for really 40 years. You know, workers have been afraid they're just going to be easily replaced by scabs. Now you're not even going to be able to get those scabs. Jobs are
Right.
plentiful. So who's going to cross? Who's motivated to go cross a picket line at Kaiser Permanente?
Exactly. Yeah.
So this is positive. What's really interesting is the theory as well. If you've got these rising labor costs, you're going to have runaway inflation. And on the stock market side, everyone was anticipating really poor earnings for this quarter. Earnings season just started. And actually, earnings have been really good, which kind of affirms the Keynesian view that if you put money in people's pockets, it's actually good for everybody. They actually go out and buy your shit. If you pay the workers who make your shit more, they're also going to buy your shit.
Well, sure.
And so far, that's how it's looking. earnings season is great so far.
Yeah, and it's good to know that the political left is really seizing on all this momentum by steadfastly trying to get Dave Chappelle canceled.
Yeah.
Really, because he's a transphobe. That's really great work.
That's why the first word that always comes to mind when you think about the modern left is relatable.
Right. Well, that guy in the black sweatshirt that they interviewed in that NBC clip there, talking about whether or not Dave Chappelle is a cancelable transphobe is really that was his number one issue until he went on strike. Like now he's got
and he
things
kind of had to
occupying
shift
his time.
his emphasis.
Right, but once this is settled, go right back to that, because that's
Yes.
how you're going to get that guy on board. Absolutely.
That's how people decide their vote, really.
Right, exactly.
See where you fell on the question of Chappelle's final special for Netflix.
Exactly.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe wherever you saw it, on YouTube, on Rumble, or on Facebook. We have channels on all three of those platforms. Also, consider helping us create more content by becoming a member at patreon.com/DoDissidents, or on Facebook, where you can become a supporter right through our Facebook page and get bonus content every week, as well as call-in access to our live stream shows. Thank you very much for your continued support.